the Friday Cocktail, presented by Anna Glavinsky.
And I'm being joined on the line by the Badger Man. The Badger Man, who is part of something called the Badger Phone. So have him right here lined up to talk about his book, which is actually called Interrupted Journeys, Badgers and Other Roadside Distractions. It's mostly about badgers, but not entirely. It's the main theme of the book, and about finding, I suppose, a second childhood after retirement. Adrian, hello, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Can you see me?
I can't see you, but it's okay because it's radio. So absolutely fine with that. So how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm fine. I've been on a call this morning to deal with a poor young deer that had to be euthanized, sadly. But that's fairly typical of what I deal with.
Really? So, how often is someone getting in touch with you on the Badger Phone, as it were? And tell us a little bit about the Badger Phone.
Right. Well, I actually don't do the Badger Phone anymore. I actually run the deer phone these days.
Okay.
But I started out with the Badger Phone, and the Badger Phone was a very basic mobile phone. In fact, it was the first mobile phone I ever had because I don't do technology. And it was your bottom of the range push button model. And I found very quickly when I took it on that I was absolutely inundated with calls. So I had to set up a cheap contract. And I was literally dealing with hundreds of casualties a year because I added foxes and deer to badgers. So a huge number of casualties, but also other issues with these animals as well. So I was dealing with incidents every day, sometimes 2 or 3 incidents a day, though there are quieter times of the year. Winter is quieter.
So tell me just a little bit more about this phone, the concept. So it's a special dedicated phone number, as I understand, in your area. How do people find out about it? And how did you even, initiate it and start letting people know that you were there to save the day or at least help out when it came to the wildlife in your area?
Well, the Badger Phone was already in existence, but it wasn't being used to a huge degree. So what I did when I took it on was I got in touch with the council and I got in touch with the police and vets and rescue centres, because when a member of the public comes across an animal that's in any sort of trouble, they think, who should I call? If it's a dead animal, they'll ring the council because they think it'll need removing. But even a dead animal is very important to me because it's a source of information. And if it's an animal that's still alive, they're likely to ring a vet. And if it's an animal causing a road problem, they're likely to call the police. And then because these people are all aware of me, they'd phone me. But of course, the general public would become familiar with my number as well. And now that we've got all these other different methods of disseminating the number, people get in touch with me in all sorts of different ways and find my number in all sorts of different ways.
Wow, okay, I get it. So it's like a communication network that all comes back down to you. And what about your sort of expertise? How did you put yourself forward as being the person to get in touch when it came to, specifically badgers?
Well, as far as badgers are concerned, I was out in the field all the time because when I joined the Badger Group, it was an opportunity for me to learn so much, and there were people that I could learn from very quickly. So I made sure I got out there, and I very quickly built up the expertise. And as I was dealing with badgers, I fortuitously learnt about foxes and deer at the same time. So eventually, I became the person who, knew what to do.
And could you remember your first ever call out, what was going on, how you felt, and what you had to do?
I do. It was actually, I was given the responsibility for that first badger because it was very close to where I lived. And it was actually snowing very heavily at the time. In fact, it snowed so heavily that I couldn't get to the incident by car, but it was within walking distance. And actually, when I arrived at the location, there was no sign of this badger. So at first I thought it was buried under the snow. But what had happened was somebody had got their gardener to remove it in a wheelbarrow, and it was actually in their greenhouse, which I didn't find out till a couple of days later. So that was the first one.
And all in a day's work, what sort of other call-outs do you get and things you have to deal with and experience?
Well, the really traumatic ones are the ones that I deal with quite a lot these days, which are deer that have been hit by a car and are still alive. So, for example, the young deer this morning, it was reported by a lady who's got a small holding, lots of chickens, and she'd come across this young deer at the roadside and it couldn't get up. She actually moved it. Now, often with small deer in particular, they start to struggle, they start to kick, and they start to scream, and it's very distressing to deal with. But this youngster actually remained fairly calm. But she then had to think, what do I do? She phoned the vets. The vets gave her my number. I came out and had a look. And I realised it was a situation wherein I needed a vet to have a look to make sure that the right decision was made, whether it should be euthanized or it could be given a chance in rehabilitation. It wasn't an incident where I would have called out a farmer to shoot it, because with it being such a small animal, it would have been inappropriate to do that. I knew that if it had to be euthanized, it had to be done in a subtle, gentle fashion, in which case, I needed the vet. And it turned out that this poor creature had a broken spine. So therefore its back end was paralyzed. So I'm afraid it had to be put down.
And how do you feel when you come across those scenarios? Are you able to sort of disassociate from it a little bit emotionally so that you can carry on, doing, or do you carry it with you? Do you get pretty upset about it?
Sometimes I get very upset. Sometimes it's the shock. So I had one recently where I was led to believe that it was dead. And when I actually came along and found that it was still alive, I was very upset.
Wow.
So yes, sometimes it does get to me, but I know that there has to be somebody there who knows what to do, who understands the animal's needs, and is prepared to do it. So even though it's very upsetting, I feel proud of actually being able to do it.
Absolutely.
Because many people say to me, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah. And is it paid off with positive experiences as well? Tell us about some of those.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the positive ones really make up, even though there's only a small handful each year, they really keep me going. And there was a fabulous one towards the end of last year, because usually when you've got a rehabilitated animal, particularly a deer, it needs sedating if you're going to move it to a new location, because it's very distressed about what's happening to it. But we actually had one at the end of last year, which was actually very calm. And the decision was made that it didn't need to be sedated. So we were able to put it in a dog cage, put it in the back of a car, transport it to where we needed to take it. And it's very important to know where it actually belongs, and to carry it. And carrying a deer in a cage is not easy, I'll tell you. But this lovely animal sat there calmly as if it was in a sedan chair being carried. And when we put it down, it didn't actually seem to want to come out of the cage. So I gently leant inside the cage and helped it out onto its feet. and it sort of looked at me as if, what would he like me to do now? And it sort of calmly went in the direction I wanted it to do, which is very unusual because usually they would bolt. So that was a really nice one.
And it involves a lot of people, some of the work that you do by the sounds of it. Do you feel like you've got a community around you that are involved in this type of work?
Yeah, I very much rely on police when it's at the roadside on a busy road. They are invaluable because they can make things happen and they can stop traffic. I rely very much on vets if I'm unsure as to what the right decision is. But they also rely very strongly on me. And I've built up that experience where I know I can be relied on. And I'm always available because it's the most important thing to me. So I make sure I am available.
And it does sound like a very important job, especially as, there's so much of the country getting modernised and animals are being pushed out of their habitats and things like that. You're in West Yorkshire, I believe. Do you know if this sort of service exists in other parts of the country, or is this just something that you do in your area?
I think the way I do it is possibly unique. Partly because I'm a volunteer, partly because I'm a total amateur who's become supposedly an expert through experience. A lot of areas have deer management, but that's a professional setup, so it's rather different. I rarely come across these guys because we don't have any in. Sorry to call them guys, because we don't have anybody like that in our borough. So I'm the person that's available in this borough. I do get called from other areas, and I do explain that it's an emergency. It's going to take too long for me to get there. I will give you advice and I will tell you who you should get to help you. But I can't come out because it's going to take too long.
And why did you decide to take up this role, and what do your friends and family think of it?
I think most people are very impressed with what I do. Sometimes I rope friends in if they're available. I'll say, right, I need a hand. I've got a deer that's too heavy for me to carry on my own. Are you free? Give us a hand. So yeah, and everybody's positive about it. Yeah.
Excellent. And we're coming to the book now. How's the book written? Is it just your experiences? Do you have little short stories in there? Explain us about the book.
Yeah, it's a very anecdotal book because you can't see it. I'm holding it up. You can't see it. I mean, there have been plenty of books about badgers and foxes in particular written in the past, so I didn't want to repeat what I'd already read, and I didn't want to write the same sort of book. I wanted it to be based on my experience, and I wanted it to be about what I had learned. So it's very much anecdotal. I wanted it to be readable, and I believe it is. I wanted it to be entertaining. I wanted it to be thought-provoking. I wanted it to be moving. And I also wanted it to be funny occasionally. You need a bit of light-hearted humour occasionally to lighten the atmosphere. But roe deer, there really aren't many books written for general readers about roe deer. So that was something, and they take up about half of the book, to be honest. And I'm actually writing another book specifically about roe deer now. So that's very much a vacuum that I think I'm filling.
And how is the process for you of actually sitting down behind a desk, getting pen to paper, getting those words out, especially you compare that to the sort of field life that you're living?
It comes quite easily because I've always put pen to paper. That's the way I live. I've always been a serious reader, and I've always wanted to write a book. So I've always kept myself in in practice at writing. So whenever something occurs that I think is going to be in the book, I'll make sure that I get the basics down in diary form, and I'll probably do a rough draft and then come back to it when the phone stops ringing and do it properly.
And sorry, carry on.
So I was just going to say, and I always write longhand, and I rely very much on my so-called typist, who's a friend, who'd become a very good friend, who's also become my secretary and manager. I mean, she set up this afternoon as well.
Oh, fantastic. So again, you're bringing a team around you. I think that sounds like one of your skills is actually bringing people together and creating a team. And so you say you've got another book in the pipeline. What's coming up?
Now, I'm intending that this next one's going to be called Accidental Encounters, with the subtitle With Deer and Others. I'm on my third attempt at it, and I think I'm getting it right this time. And I'm just looking at a couple more chapters to round it off. And then once Helen, my typist, secretary, manager, has got it finished and we've gone through it together, we'll be ready to send it to publishers and see what they think.
Oh, well, fingers crossed. All the best with that. But also, of course, with your continued work with the badgers and the deer and the other wildlife in England. Thank you very much for your time speaking with us today, Adrian.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was Adrian Potter, and his book is called Interrupted Journeys. And you can find it on Amazon or, of course, on Talk Radio Europe Bookshop.